Like sands through the hourglass, these are the bins of our lives. I say this because this conversation speaks quite a lot about my co-host here,
Mm.
Ben, who also decided quite later
I
in his
held the
life to
brakes. I was
become a
like, no,
father.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no, until I couldn't resist.
We're speaking all things parenting and family, and increasingly individuals and couples are choosing to have children much later in their lives, reflecting shifts in societal expectations, personal goals, and lifestyle priorities. This decision often stems from a desire to achieve career milestones, perhaps financial stability, or even personal growth before assuming the responsibilities of parenthood. Today, we're speaking about the motivations, the benefits, the challenges of delayed parenthood, and how this choice is shaping modern family life. Joining us on the line is director and founder of Conscious Connections, Natalee Holmes. Natalee, thank you so much for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Nice. Thanks to have me back.
It's great to have you back, Natalee. Having children these days is spoken about a lot more. And I think it's beautiful to see that it seems like more and more people are becoming more conscious and intentional about the choice to become a parent, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's something that just happens anymore. I think people plan it and it needs to be planned, I guess, in this day and age.
And so, for most of us who just find ourselves in situations or circumstances where children are there, or maybe those who've thought, yeah, actually, I want to start my family much earlier on, for many people, you can start feeling the pressure when you get to your 30s or in your late 20s. Like, yeah, all the people that I know have started having children, all the people that I know, their children are growing up, and I'm the only one left behind. But it seems like people are saying, well, I'm not doing the FOMO anymore. I'm going to wait until I am ready. Let's speak a little bit about that. What do you think is contributing to more people deciding to put a hold on starting a family or have children before later on in their lives?
Sure, plus I think there's a real shift in priorities. Most people are focusing, or not most, but many people are focusing on education, on their careers, on getting financially stable because life is expensive. The cost of living, childcare is higher than ever. So I think parenting becomes something we plan to, we don't just fall into. And I think socially, people want to know who they are before they become parents. They want to grow personally first. And especially with women, women are navigating career advancements, along with societal expectations about family. So timing seems to have become much more deliberate.
Hmm. And that timing is really something that it's tricky in today's society because when you look at our African economies, it's not just delayed gratification because, you know, out of pleasure, but it's a thing that you do because of circumstances and the social conditions as you've highlighted. How does delaying in itself affect your parenthood in terms of someone's readiness for the responsibilities of raising a child?
So I think there are definite upsides. Older parents can be more emotionally mature. Financial stability is usually better at that age. They have a broader perspective when it comes to parenting. Sometimes they tend to be more patient. Obviously, this is personality dependent, but they've had time to build confidence and life skills, and it makes them feel calmer and more confident about parenting. So, but it also depends on how long you delay that. You can also wait too long and then you have less energy, you're less flexible, especially when children are young. So I think the key is balance, being ready enough emotionally and practically rather than waiting for that perfect time, which I don't think exists. So I think the truth is no matter what your age, you're never fully ready because parenting stretches you in ways you can never predict. So I think
Mhm.
waiting for that perfect moment can sometimes mean missing the right moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had my little one now recently. I turned 40 this year. I had him last year. And I was like, man, I should have just done it earlier. But not really because I'm a bit confused because I'm thinking, by the time I'm 60, how old is this little one going to be? Was I supposed to do it earlier on, or what? Like you say, there's really no perfect time to it. So what role do emotional factors like feeling ready or having self-doubt play in that decision to wait?
I think that's a huge one. I think emotional decisions are really what drive us. So, many people today are very aware of what parenting entails, and they want to get it right. And that creates an awareness that can cause anxiety or a need for perfectionism. And I think when you worry too much about being a good enough parent, you have to deal with the self-doubt. You have to deal with fear of how it's going to change your life. Are you going to lose freedom? There's a lot of uncertainty. And those worries can cause people to wait. But, from a coaching point of view, I often remind people that readiness isn't a feeling, it's a process. You grow into parenting,
Sure.
just like you grow into any other roles. You learn as you go. I often tell my oldest that he's our guinea pig. We had to learn right with him.
Poor him, man.
I do. I call him that all the time. Even now, as he's navigating older life, I say,
Sure.
I've never been a mom of a 25-year-old. I'm still learning. And, no kids come with a manual or a 1-800 number, and there's definitely no return policy. So you just have to figure it out.
On it. I was hoping for that return policy.
No, sorry.
Now, that
It's not
being
going
said,
back.
right, like you said, it actually is trial and error. So a lot of people who are actually trying to make that decision on when to have their children, should they wait, should they just go for it now, they think to themselves, yeah, if it's going to be trial and error anyway, why wait? What are some of the real benefits of waiting a little bit later in life to be ready in whatever aspect that you deem to be ready before having children?
So I was actually talking to a friend of mine last night. She had kids when she was 40. And I think the obvious advantage is the financial stability. Generally, by that age, you're a little bit more financially secure. You have more life experience. And she was more sure of who she was. They've had the time to build emotional intelligence. And I think that helps you as a parent with empathy, with self-awareness. And it makes you maybe a little more intentional about how you raise your children. They try to parent with intention because they've thought about what kind of family they want to create. Where I think younger, you kind of go into crisis mode and like survival mode. But I think another advantage that she was actually saying is it forces you to stay young. You have to keep up with your kids, and you're involved in more of the fun, the activities, the parties, the adventures. So it keeps you young.
And let's speak about that. When we come back after the break, I really want to look at, when one does eventually have those children, yeah, there are challenges to everything. And some of the challenges that we can look at, sure, you're more financially stable. Yes, perhaps you feel like you've developed personally or your career is exactly where you need it to be. But raising children is raising a whole human that you've never met before. Like you just go to the hospital and they give you this random stranger you don't even
What
know.
are you doing here?
And
I
they
don't
say
know
they
you.
say you must go home with the stranger you don't know. So there obviously will be challenges to parenting nonetheless. Stay with us on the line, Natalie, and we can find out a little bit about the challenges after the break.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Palesa and Benjamin, fuel your day with fresh African perspective on Channel Africa.
Hey, joining us once again on our show is Natalee Holmes, director and founder of Conscious Connections. We're speaking about parenting later in life. And Natalee, that's the thing, that kind of stability is something that you probably have a benefit of. But like as I mentioned earlier on, you also don't have in a lot of time in your hands because you only have maybe fewer years than you would have if you had a child earlier, right? And that's the difficult thing to navigate as a parent, to say, I probably have 30 years left of my life, being realistic. How am I going to maximize that with this little one? How am I going to make sure that I give them the best that I can? Is that a position that you should put yourself in with that question? Or should you just be present as you can be on a daily?
Sure, Ben, I think nobody knows. Tomorrow's not promised to anyone. You
Yeah.
might be a 26-year-old and not have it tomorrow. You just don't know. So I think that should be a general principle we should all live by anyway. Live with today, make today, live it as if it was your last. So, but I think in terms of long-term planning, yeah, it is a consideration. Like, what's going to happen when, you're older, and do they still need support? Will they still be in university? And I think you've got to have your ducks in a row, make sure your will's in place, make sure they're provided for. It's a morbid thought, but I mean, it can happen to anyone. We should all do that anyway. So yeah, I mean, it's a consideration and it's a reality, but I don't think it's something you need to mull and dwell over and feel bad about. It is what it is at the moment.
Yeah, and my knees are not as flexible as they used to be. So running with this little one is a bit of a challenge. But I think your friend is right by saying, the young ones actually also bring that youthfulness out of all of us. And those fun moments are just a great moment, even in your older years, to share that fun element of parenting, isn't it?
Yeah, it keeps you alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to know, because on the flip side, what would you say are the notable challenges, though, for someone who may be facing starting a family at a later stage?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious are the biological challenges, like your knees, and you also risk fertility concerns and potential complications in pregnancy. But aside from biology, you don't generally have the energy levels you had in your 20s. So that's a thing to consider. You may also need to make lifestyle adjustments. You might have been quite set in your ways, and now you've got to accommodate a baby or baby stuff. I mean, we know how much stuff babies bring into a house.
Oh, and there's so many little stuff.
Yeah, I know. You think this tiny little baby has more stuff than you. And I think also in your social circles, things can feel different. When you're an older parent of young children, most of your peers are probably done with parenting. They're empty nesters, or they've got much older kids in varsity. So they don't have to worry about babysitting and consider those things. So they can participate in social engagements in the afternoons or weeknight without a worry. But often, you can't join because you've got to think about babysitting, or you can't leave your kids alone yet because they're not too old. And I think another challenge is, you find yourself in a career that might be more demanding. You might be at a higher level or in a role that's a higher level and have a lot more responsibility, and that requires a lot of juggling. And another thing is you could find yourself caring for your own children and have aging parents at the same time. But yeah, none of these can't be managed. You can plan around them and you can get support for them. You just need to know what your limits are and ask for help when you need it.
And let's speak about that. If you do decide to have children a lot later on, how important is a building of a community of sorts? Maybe that community could be hired help. Maybe that community could be extended family and friends. Is that something that you should consider?
Look, I think it takes a village to raise a child. So the more support you can have, the better. And I think it also makes you more well-rounded, balanced, because you're not full on all the time. You've got a little bit of space, So yeah, I mean, if you can afford it, or if you've got a grandparent who could move in or that lives with you, you get that other support. But that also comes with other challenges. There's the advantage of shared childcare. I've got in-house babysitters, and obviously there's better bonding between generations, but it also means you have to be quite fixed on your boundaries. So.
And, as we wrap up, how do you think this trend of delayed parenthood could, in fact, impact family structures, workplaces, and societies in future?
Sure, Ben, I think we're already seeing smaller families. There are more households with single children. Multi-generational living is becoming more common. There's some homes that have grandparents, parents, and children, and they're all sharing. And yeah, that can be a gift. And like I said, it can be a challenge. But I think in terms of work, companies are going to have to need to adapt to things like giving better parental leave or maybe better childcare support and even more important, allowing flexible schedules, And I think it's one of the blessings of COVID. The hybrid working is not such a foreign thing anymore. But I think if you're in a more demanding career because of your age, and you've climbed the ladder, obviously a little more than a 20-year-old will, I think they have to be flexible to that. And I think, socially, families are going to look different. They'll be more blended. They'll be more intentional, possibly more emotionally grounded. So I think, I think people are choosing to have children on purpose. And I think that can be a positive thing overall.
I do think it is a positive thing indeed. We'll leave it there, Natalee. I think it's a really great conversation, but it's also good to see more intention when it comes to parenting and intention of raising children in a particular way, or once your particular readiness is there. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't come without the challenges as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Natalee, where do we find you on Conscious Connections?
www.consciousconnections.co.za or 082-525-7941.
Yeah, if you're calling from outside South Africa, +27 is the code for the country. Thanks again, Natalee, for joining us.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Palesa. Nice to see you again.
Fantastic.